I'd like to thank Rabbi Arian, who got me interested in the topic of the Akeda, who taught me about the Akeda, and who inspired this talk. Any Mishigas is my own. The Torah's words are eternally true teachings. My goal in making sense of the Akeda was to find a quiet truth in there about what it means to be human. I wanted to strip the drama out of the story. I thought if the text is teaching about how the world does operate, instead of thinking about Abraham or else keep things as possible, the God is not to sacrifice. And prevent the servants from interfering or thinking that Abraham had fallen into idolatry. But irrespective of motive, Abraham did tell them that he and Isaac would return. Interpretation, God is saying, although I rule over man, who rules over me? It is a righteous person. How is it possible to say that a righteous person rules over God, as it were? As I, God, issue a decree, and the righteous person nullifies it. And I suggest this is what happened. That God decreed that Isaac would die by his father's hand, and Abraham nullified the decree with his words. I see this story teaching us about the transformative power of utterance. I think the Torah is teaching us that our words to each other have the power to overturn a divine decree when even begging and pleading with God would not help. However, if the words of a righteous person can annul a decree of death and save a life, then it follows that the words of a righteous person have the potential to annul a decree of life and bring death. And if the words of a righteous person can take a life, then it seems to me that the words of wicked people can do even more harm. My emphasis on the power of human speech to transform a divine decree suggests that God has devolved some degree of authority over life and death to his creation, to humanity. And I see this as an essential part of the Akeda's core message. When he has his knife at his son's throat, it is Abraham, not God, who decides whether Isaac will live or die. The angel's words have forced Abraham to make a decision, not simply to do as he is told. He has conflicting orders from the angel and from God. Whatever Abraham decides is in accord with and in opposition to God's stated will. To me, what matters most in the story is not what decision Abraham makes, but that the decision is Abraham's to make. And I think this notion that at least some people have authority over life and death is a challenge to our traditional understanding that it is God, not individuals, who ultimately decides who will live and who will die and when. It is also a challenge to the belief that all deaths, whenever and however they occur, are God's will and thus ultimately for the best. But how do we reconcile the supremacy of human will and God's will when it comes to determining who will live and who will die? Our tradition emphasizes the importance and the consequences of our decisions, and we know from experience that the results of individual actions echo through a community and across time. The effects are not isolated. After speaking to the servants, Abraham speaks to Isaac and tells him that God would take care of providing a lamb for a burnt offering. Although suggested that the angel's words to Abraham are the forcing event that required Abraham to make a moral decision, it's also possible to understand Abraham's words to Isaac as the forcing event in the story. If God did not send an animal, Abraham would have become a liar. If he had lied to his son about the God of truth, Abraham would have been unworthy and unable to establish a religion of truth. With his words to Isaac, Abraham changed the meaning of his potential future actions. If God wanted to continue with the Abraham story, then it seems that God had no choice but to end the test and set the lamb. Except instead of the test ending, Abraham continues the journey and finds Isaac on the wood. God sends a ram, not a lamb. And by my reasoning, this test should have ended even before he spoke to Isaac back with his words to the servants. And why would Abraham be rewarded for disqualifying himself from a tough test? But what was the test? And how can I know what the test was without knowing what attribute or ability or learning was being tested? We'll only be able to understand what was being tested if I know why Abraham was being tested. And more to the point, why is the Torah calling our attention to this being a test? Abraham was tested many times. And I don't think it's possible to know the why without first knowing the who. Who was Abraham? To me, Abraham is the first person to resolve the dialectic tension between Adam 1 and Adam 2 that we read about in Parashat a couple of weeks ago and was discussed by Rabbi Soloveitchik in the Lone Man of Faith. I think this tension is within each of us, and it's why the Adam stories are so important and remain essential today and why they're at the start of the Torah. These stories teach us about ourselves. And until we understand ourselves, how can we understand our role in creation? I think of Abraham as the man who fused rather than fluctuated between the personal poles of his majestic world-shaping nature, Adam 1, and his insecure, cowering self, Adam 2. Thus, I understand the test as being one of self-knowledge, understanding, and discernment, rather than a test of blind obedience or basic moral character. And this is what makes it a subtle and complex test that is obscured and glossed in high drama, which may be why the Torah calls our attention to it even being a test. Now I can try and make sense of Abraham's words to God at the start of the story, Hineni. I've often thought of "here I am" as a statement of humble acceptance and readiness. I wonder, however, if it would be more appropriate to translate Hineni as "here I am," which I understand as a bold assertion of capability. God tells Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, and he responds, "Here I am," with the implication that he is ready and able to move heaven and earth to save Isaac. I hear an echo of Abraham's Hineni in the Chazan's Hineni on Rosh Hashanah. No matter how humbly or modestly the invocation may be made, in Hineni, I hear the Chazan's audacious statement of readiness and ability to shape decrees in heaven and life on earth on behalf of our community. So Abraham is told to kill his son and proceeds on two parallel tracks. His physical actions keep to God's instructions. What I understand to be the creative track, his words, change the meaning of the sacrifice he is ordered to make. The Abraham who has his knife to his son's throat is no longer the same Abraham who was ordered to sacrifice his son. Once Abraham speaks to his servant, the story follows his narrative, not the one set by God. And I see Abraham as being rewarded for knowing how to use words to reshape the world and future, not for his willingness or unwillingness to kill Isaac. The lesson I take from Kehilat is that words are a primary tool for reshaping our world, for better or for worse. And because divine power has been delegated to each of us, God won't step in if we make a mistake. Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, oh,
Yasha Koach.
beautiful.
Any questions or?
It's not my hand question.
Cross.
Oh, can you scan it? You probably have it already.
These are just some from the, these are notes.
Oh.
You stop recording.
Stop it.
How do I stop it?
All right.
Boom.